It is very essential to have a data access strategy that will stand the test of time. In this video, we will implement the generic repository pattern that enables developer to have a single repository for all CRUD operations for each and every entity. This channel offers rewards. We have a free mailing list that once you sign up, you have access to Microsoft ebooks, cheat sheets, and a weekly tutorial that I will create. For those who would like to take it a step further and ensure that we continue making free content, please support this channel on Patreon. You have instant access to this video source code, exclusive content that's not here on YouTube. You'll be added to our private Discord server and more. The mailing list and the Patreon links are found in the description below. What are the prerequisites? Although I will do my best to explain all the concepts in a beginner-friendly way, if you have the following knowledge and tools, it will be easier for you to follow. Visual Studio 2022, .NET SDK 7 installed, a basic knowledge of C#, and a basic understanding of Entity Framework Core. But like I said, I will do my best to explain. We are going to create a movie management API. We're going to use this to demonstrate how one can implement a generic repository pattern in their project. So here I've got my Visual Studio open and we're going to create a new project. So head over to create new project and we're going to select a blank application. So I want to start everything from scratch. So open a blank solution and we're going to call this CU for code unparalleled, CU movie management service. We're going to hit create. So our blank solution is created. We're going to create 3 projects. The first one is going to be the API, which is going to provide the endpoints to our client. The second project will be our domain. So our domain is going to store the model class and our interfaces. The domain will be responsible for the business logic of our application. Then the third project is going to be data access. This will make the actual read-write request to the database operation. So I want you to right click on the solution, select add the new project, then select ASP.NET Core Web API. If it's not on your listen templates, then you might go here and type that .NET Core Web API. Don't confuse with Web App, it's Web API. So select that. Then you're going to click next. We're going to call this movie management .API. And then you're going to go next. So where is in the .NET 7 framework? It's the latest, came out just the other week. You're going to configure for HTTPS. You're going to use controllers and enable Open API support, which will enable you to test your API using Swagger. Then you're going to click create. So by default, Microsoft comes with a controller. It's called weather focused. We're going to delete that. And it also comes with the weather focused class. We're going to delete that. So our API is done. So this will be responsible for whoever wants to consume our API. Then we're going to have the domain. The domain is going to have the logic of the business. So I want you to click on the solution, then select new project. This time it's going to be a class library. So select class library, hit next, call it movie management dot domain, and you're going to hit next. Select the .NET 7 SDK and then you're going to click create and go ahead and delete the class, which comes automatically with that. And then we're going to repeat the same process and create the movie management project, and this class library is going to be data access. So call that movie management dot data access. Select the .NET 7 framework, click create, and I want you to go ahead and also delete the class library. So we have 3 projects which we're going to use. We've got the API, the data access, and the domain. Now in a movie management system, you're going to have entities, and these are the ones that we're going to focus on how to talk to. So in this scenario, we're going to have 4, just for the sake of demonstration. So if you're watching this video, you're also lucky because you're going to learn Entity Framework Core relationships, which I feel like it's very, very crucial. So we're going to focus on one-to-many, many-to-many, and one-to-one, so that not only are you going to understand the pattern itself, but also learn a few things about Entity Framework. So that will be a bonus for you. So we're going to have 4 entities. Now, as per our conversion here, the domain is what has the business logic. So the entities will be in the domain. This is where the business logic is going to be. So I want you to create a folder called entities in the domain project. So create a folder called entities. And then we're going to have 4 entities. Let me just make that a capital letter. Okay. Within that, you're going to create an entity, which it's a class, obviously. It's going to be called actor, the first one. Make that public. Now, an actor can have an ID. An actor can have a first name. All right, so first name. You could just default that to string.empty. An actor could have, well, last name. Last name. All right, string.empty. There you go. An actor can be in many movies. So one actor can act into many movies. So we want to also introduce a one-to-many relationship here, which also you also learn. So we're going to create a list of movie. Now movie is already created, but don't worry. We are going to create that. So an actor can star in many movies. So this movie is already created. So one actor can be in many movies. So you'll see that in Entity Framework, we're going to represent that with a list. There is no need to add any configurations, but though you could add if you want, but we believe in configuration. We believe in conversion over configuration. So Entity Framework, once it sees this, it should be able to know what type of relationship that is. Again, we also expect an actor to have to have one biography. Biography, all right? So get and set. So an actor should have a biography. An actor should have at least one biography. So if it's one, we're going to represent it as just that object through which it's going to be in biography. Now you see it's saying these two errors. It means we have to go ahead and create those two classes. So entities, you're going to add an entity called movie, make it public, and also let's create another entity called biography. Add class, call that class biography, make it public. All right, so let's make this as nullable so that when you're creating a movie, it shouldn't be a must to add. When you're creating an actor, it shouldn't be a must to add the others. So a movie, what does a movie have? A movie should have an ID, obviously. A movie should have, I would say, a name. So a movie should have a name. We're going to default that to string or empty. A movie can have a description if you want. Again, let's default that to string or empty. String.empty rather, sorry. And a movie can have an actor is linked to a movie. So one actor can be in many movies, but many movies can have one actor. That's just our business case. So you're going to bring in here public, actor, and actor, like so. Now to cement that sort of relationship, I'm going to make it nullable. To cement that sort of relationship, you're going to need to have what will link an actor to a movie. It's going to be the actor ID. So the primary key in actor is actor ID. The foreign key in the movie is going to be actor ID. So Entity Framework, once you do that, it will know that if I see actor ID, that is a link to do with the actor itself. And also, movies fall into categories. These are called genres or categories. So a movie could be action, could be horror, could be multiple, could be one. So many movies could fall into many genres. So underneath horror, there could be many movies, and underneath many movies, they could also be tied to horror. So I'm going to bring in here another entity called genre, which is not yet created. I'll make it nullable, and I call this genre, right? Get and set, and I'll go ahead and create this genre in the entities. So go ahead and create the genre and make it public, right? So for many to many, what happens? If I just put genre here, I'm saying one, but if I put the word list here, Entity Framework will know that a movie belongs to many genres. So I'll go to the genre itself, And in the journal, you're going to need to have a journal ID, obviously, to know the specific journal. And also, besides that, you want to have the journal name. So I'm going to bring a prop name and default that to string.empty. But since this is a many-to-many relationship, so I also have to have a list here of movie here, and I'm making nullable. Okay. Now we said biography is still empty. We said a biography should have a bio ID. So you should have a bio ID. And you want to have description of that bio. Description of that bio that talks about that actor. And since this is one-to-one, you also need to have here the actor object here, so that it knows that this is one-to-one. So you're gonna get set over there. And also, since it's one-to-one, you need to bring in the concept of an actor ID. So prop int actor ID. There we go. And let's just default this to string.empty. So let me go one over time of our entity so that you understand the relationships, because that is very, very, very vital if you are to understand the entity framework. So how are we doing our relationships? We're saying an actor can have only one biography. So you will see that we've brought the biography there. We brought the biography object there. We're saying an actor can fall into many movies, can act many movies. That's why you're seeing a list of movies. So entity framework is going to know that at this juncture, it will be a list of movies, right? Then we're saying a genre can fall into multiple movies. And a movie can have multiple genres. But one actor can act in one movie, in that movie. Like you can have the same actor twice in one movie. That's not possible. So that's what we're saying here. Now you will see that for the case of one-to-one here, which is like the actor and the biography, it's going to be, well, we're going to use a foreign key. For the sake of one-to-many here, we're going to use the foreign key, which would be the actor ID in this case. Okay, let me just remove that. All right. But when it comes to movies and genres, these are many-to-many. So we need to create, it's what we call, it's kind of a weak entity. So what entity framework will do, it will create a table called movie genre. And that movie genre is going to have the movie ID and the genre ID. So there will be another table. I want you to know these things so that when we create the database, you understand how these things work. All right. So now we have our entities. We are saying that these are our entities. These are what will make up our movie management system. What is our next order of business? Our next order of business is now to create what we call a data context. So this repository will be implemented using entity framework core. So we need to bring in entity framework core. Now there's a concept of what we call a context. A context is specific to entity framework. So a context is going to give you a window through which you access a database. So you have your SQL Server database somewhere. Could be on your cloud, could be on your laptop, could be on a server which is locally hosted. And you've got your API somewhere. Your API needs to talk to that database. It will talk to via the context. So the context will give you access to things in that database. So here we're going to create that context and we're going to use that context. Now the question is, this is the domain. We're saying the domain only has the business logic. So it means for you to talk to the database, as per our design, you need to talk to the data access layer. But for you to use the entity framework core, you have to bring in the entity framework core things. So you're going to right click on your data access class library and you're going to manage NuGet packages. Once you get there, you're going to go to browse and you're going to type entity framework core. Entity framework core. All right, so you're going to get the entity framework core, make sure it's 7, install that. And what else might we need? You're going to need to have the SQL Server, because we're going to use the SQL Server library, database, so that one is needed. And maybe tools. So install that. So we have brought entity framework core into our data access layer. We're saying now we want access to that window. Give us that access through which we can access the database. So our next order of business is to right click on the data access. Let's get a folder. We're going to call that folder context. Then within that folder, we are going to create a class. We're going to call that class movie management db context. That will be used to talk to our database. So movie management db context. Okay. So there's a reason why we brought in entity framework. It's because we want to use its functionality to talk to the database. So we're going to inherit what we call a db context, which is an entity framework core implementation. So this db context will give this class ours access to whatever features we have in our database, to run our migrations, to talk to our database, and what have you. All right. So for you to access this context, you need to have a constructor, and this constructor takes in what we call a db context options. All right. So db context options, and this just takes in the name of your class, and you're going to give it the options, and I'm going to show you this as we're proceeding. And then this is going to have, you're going to give it the base, and the base is going to have the options. All right, like so. Okay, there you have it. Let me just increase the font a little bit so that everybody can see, even on mobile devices. So we're saying this is our context, but mind you, at this juncture we have no database anywhere. We're going to use what we call code first approach. So we're going to use our code to create our database. We're going to use our entities to create our database. So this means that the database context needs to register, needs to understand what are the entities I need to build a database. So this is where we're going to declare our entities. So you want to do prop. We're going to use what we call a DB set. So a DB set, we're going to give it our entities. Our first one was what? Was actor. So we have an actor. So now there isn't any link between these two. So I want you to pay attention here. Actor is in another assembly called domain, but I want to use it there. So it will say it doesn't exist because it doesn't know. But if I get control dot, it will bring this add reference to domain. If you click that, then it means you have referenced that class library as a dependency, rather as a project reference. So this table, we're going to call it actors. All right. We're going to do the same for db set for our movie. And we've got movie, then we've got prop, db set, we've got our biography. We're going to call that biographies. Then we have prop, db set. This is going to be our genre, and we can call this genres. All right. Again, let me minimize that a bit and pretty much get some real estate over here. So what are we saying? We attend the context. We have these 4 entities. We want you to make note of these 4 entities. Okay. Now I'm going to add one more thing, because sometimes you want to start with some data. So we're going to seed some data and just put in data that we're going to begin with. Now there is a function that when you override, now overriding in programming is the function does what it does, but when you override it, you tell it to do more than what it does. So there's what we call on model creating, this one. So if we override this on model creating, we're saying when you're creating these models, please also do these certain things. So that's what override means in programming. So we want you, as you're creating, to also populate, maybe I'm going to focus on the actors and movies table for the interest of time, otherwise this video is going to be so long. So what you would do is you get the model builder over there. So you're going to say model builder, all right, dot entity. What entity do you want to play with? I want to play with the actor entity. What functionality? So they have this what we call extension methods. I'm going to use has data. So this enables you to put in data. So we're going to say has data. Then here we're going to say give us a new actor object. All right, and it has an ID. Let's give an ID of 1. Last first name, we're gonna give it Chuck, and the last name is gonna be, if you guessed it, Norris. And I could just add, so I've left the movies and the biography on purpose because those are nullable and they're not really essential for you to have an actor. An actor could be there without any movies. So this one's going to be 2, it's going to be 3, this is going to be, it could be Jendo, it's fine. And we could have Jean-Claude Van Damme. All right. So those are entities, and the other entity that I want to play with is going to be model builder. Model builder dot entity. Now I want the movies entity. So now you have to remember that the movies are linked to actors by the actor ID. So whenever you're creating a movie, and that movie needs to have an actor ID, because otherwise it's gonna crash using the foreign key. So I just want you to note that dot has data. Okay, then I'm going to do this, and I'm going to close that. Then I'm going to say give me a new movie, right? The ID of the movie could be 1. Then you have got the movie name. This could be Wakanda Forever. Then you're gonna have description, box office becoming. Then actor ID, very crucial. So actor ID, I'm gonna give it 1. Okay, if that doesn't exist, it's going to crash. So I'm going to copy this and do it 4 times, because I'm going to put one actor twice so that I show you the one-to-one relationship. So this ID is going to be 2. You could have the same Wakanda Forever movie, and the other actor could be, well, the number 2, right? Then we could have another movie with ID 3. This movie could be Black Panther, or it could just be Spider-Man. Skyscrapers, Be Warned, and this is act by the first act as well. And then I'm going to have a last movie, and this is going to be ID 4. It could be The Matrix. Blue or red pill. Then this could go to actor number 3. All right, so we're saying when you're creating the model, please add this data with you. So we have officially been able to set up our context. Now it knows. Now the next order of business is you need to connect, okay, your context to a database. All right, so we're gonna go to the API, because the API by default it comes with what we call the dependency injection container, which is here. So I don't really want to dive deep into that, otherwise we're gonna waste a lot of time and we're gonna go out of scope. If you want to see that, I've got videos, or if you want to see how you can add dependency injection within a class library, comment and we'll get to it. So we want to have a string, a connection string, to point where our database is going to reside. So where is our database residing? Okay, so we'll do that in the movie management API class. Now if you go to the application.json there, we can go and create our connection string. Okay, there it is. So connection strings, and within that we're going to have a movie connection. Now to avoid you installing SQL Server SQL Server on your PC and bring all the complexities, Microsoft Visual Studio comes with what we call a SQL Server Express. So we're going to use that. So you're going to have a data source, and the data source will be the local DB. So call this local DB slash Microsoft SQL Server SQL local DB local DB. Then you're gonna put a semicolon over there. Then you're going to have an initial catalog. It's just a fancy name for your database name. The database name is going to be code unparalleled MovieDB. All right. Then you're going to put a full colon over there, a semicolon rather. Then you're going to have integrated security. Integrated security. This will just give you access to your database without any authentication as long as you're on Windows. So that is going to be true. So we're saying that when we're in a migration, we want you to use our local database and call that database CU MovieDB and enable us to go there without any authentication to the SQL Server itself. So once you've done this, the next order of business is to add entity framework to the dependency injection container. So in 10 seconds, what's dependency injection? Every system has things that it will depend on. These are called services. For instance, if you look at the API, it depends on a service called add controllers. All the controllers we use, it's what it depends. It also depends on what we call Swagger, which we'll see in the browser. So these are what are called dependencies. Now, instead of you adding them all over the place, Microsoft creates what we call a dependency injection container that enables you to have one place to register that dependency. And throughout your application, all you're going to do is you're just going to use that dependency. Same way with entity framework core here. Instead of us bring it in every field where we want to use our database, we're going to register it as a service in our container. And we're just going to reference it through that container. All right. So we are going to use entity framework in this API. It's a dependency, so we're going to register that as a service. But before we do that, since it's entity framework, then we might as well also bring in a few things to do with entity framework. So we're going to install 3 packages. We're going to install the entity framework core itself. So we're going to install the entity framework core itself, and there it is. So we're going to install that, and then we're going to install what we call the tools. And you're going to install what we call design. So this will enable you to add those dependencies. So this is your dependency injection container. It's very simple. All right. So we want to bring in a dependency for entity framework. So this is where you build. So all dependencies must come before the build, otherwise it will crash. So I'm going to, it says add service to your container. So I'm going to add entity framework, add entity framework there. So for you to add a dependency, there's this thing that you're building here called the builder. So you're going to call that builder dot on the services. You want to add something there. So we're going to add a DB context. So what's our DB context in our case? It's this one which we built here. It's called what? Movie Management DB. So it will take that. Now here you'll see that the moment you call this DB, it takes in an options menu and you give it what's needed. So I want you to pay attention. Once you've done that, it needs that option, so you're going to give that options. All right, so options, then you're going to say options, then you're going to use a dot use SQL Server, use SQL Server. And for some reason, okay, let's bring the context in. So again, because we're calling this from another assembly, we have to bring the reference, and I'm saying to use SQL Server. All right, dot use SQL Server, and here I'm going to bring in builder dot configuration dot get connection strings. Then I'm going to give it the name of the connection string. Now I see that this is not going anywhere. This can only mean one thing. There's something we haven't. Okay, using entity from a core. Perfect. And here we're going to give it the name which we brought into our movie connection. So let me just put that and explain. All right. So we're saying on the builder service, on the services, add a context. So let our system know that we're using a context, and that context is movie management. And in the options, give it, we're going to use SQL Server. and it needs to know what sort of connection it's going to use. We're saying go to the builder, in the configurations, get the connection string. So by default, Entity Framework supports connection string. So when it gets here, it will see the word connection strings. Then it will go inside and it will attempt to get the connection string, provided you give it a name, which is movie connection. So it will be able now to know that's where the database is. So we have managed to create our context, create our entities. Now let us go ahead and create what we call, let's create a database. So we're going to run what we call database migrations. So you're going to head over to Tools, then go to NuGet Package Manager, and select the Package Manager console. But I want you to be careful here where you're going to run your migration, because you might run into an error. You'll see that by default it defaults to API, but we want our database to be accessed using the data access. That's where our context is. So I want you to change this and make it data access. Then you're going to put the word add migration, then you're going to call this creating DB, right? And press enter. Something interesting is going to happen once you do this. You're going to see a folder called migrations being created here. All right, and I want you to go and look closely at what's been created. Okay, so it's saying there are two methods. There is the up method and there is the down method, right? So we're saying in the up method, create for us a table called what? Actors. So there is a table called actors. It's saying these are the columns. This is the primary key. Go and create for us a table called genres. These are the two items. That's the primary key. Create for us a table called what? Biographies. Now you see something interesting here. You see that the actor ID is now there. But the actor ID is now what? A foreign key. To what table? The principal table is actors. So you've linked your biography to one actor, right? Again, you see a table called movies. But the movies is linked to what? You see this actor, all right? Again, since movies and genres, I said they're a weak entity, they're going to create a table called genre movie, which would just be, the primary key would just be those two primary keys of those two subsequent tables. Then I've got migration builder.insert data. So here it's inserting this data, this and that. And there it's creating indexes. Now it's saying if you undo the migration, it's going to drop all this table that's created. So our next order of business now would be to create the database. So this would be, you're just going to type update hyphen database. So this will go out of its way and it's going to create for you a database, and you see done. So all it was doing here is it was running what? SQL queries. So there you have it, a database has been created. So how do we check that our database has been created? So our database name has to be CU MovieDB. Now if you go to view in Visual Studio and select SQL Server Object Explorer, then underneath the SQL Server you're going to see the logo DB there, this one. Then you're going to go to databases. You will see that CU MovieDB has been created. And if you go there, you will see that the tables also have been created. There they are. Plus one table, which is the migration history. So this just keeps track of your migrations. Now, our next order of business now is to actually implement the generic pattern. So what you do normally is you're going to create a repository pattern for each and every entity, which becomes problematic if they are like 4, and in general you have like hundreds of entities in any system. So are you going to have 100 repository patterns? That becomes a problem. So we want to say, okay, whatever belongs to the CRUD, create, read, update, and delete. At least we can just put that as something that's generic. And once we do that something as generic, it will be easier for us to apply that on each and every entity. So we said the domain is responsible for logic. The data access is responsible for us talking to the actual database. Okay. So our entire logic to talk to the database is going to be in our domain. So in our domain, we're going to create a folder, and we're going to call that folder repository. And mind you, the domain doesn't talk to the database. It's a data access. And you'll see that as we go. So create a folder called repository. And within that, we're going to create an interface. and we're going to call that interface an interface. It's going to be an I generic repository. Okay, so this one is what we are going to define all of our common data access methods, and they're going to be in this generic. Okay, so a generic in general in C# it's like you're using a class that you have no idea what you're going to use. You could have a function that it takes in a parameter, an integer. So that function knows that every single time it's going to get an integer. But when we use generics, we just say this could be a class and handle that class. All right, that's the whole concept. It gives you the flexibility. It means you can just give it any entity and say, go and just get me all of that entity. That's what the generic repository affords us with. So it means we're going to give it an argument called t. Okay, so t there means whatever you're going to give. But since we want this t to be a class, we want it to be explicitly a class, we're going to say, make sure that this t is a class. So we're saying this interface takes in any class you give it. You don't have to know the class beforehand. Hence the word generic. All right. Then we're going to say, so I want you to make sense of t. So we're going to have get by id int id. So we're saying when given the id, return the t. Just give the t, whatever the t could be. It could be the actor, it could be the biography. All right. So we're going general here. Okay, this is a skill I think every developer should have, especially generics. Then we're going to have an I enumerable of t get all. So whenever we just call this, whenever you give me something, whenever you are implementing the generic and you give me a class, get all of that. Then we're going to have our next order of business. It's going to be an I enumerable. Sometimes we want to have the flexibility of not just giving it our own expression. Okay, so we're going to say enable us to give us our own expression. All right, so expression, and this expression is going to take a func t and putting in a predicate. Okay, so we're saying sometimes if we're going to give a predicate, let's say a lambda function, it should be able to get a lambda and find that specific. We should be able to add an entity, right? So we should be able to add an entity, and we should be able to also add multiple entities should there be the need. So you should be able to add a range of given entities. So this could be an array of entities. You should be able to do that. You should be also able to remove an entity. You should be also able to remove a range of entities. So we should be able to remove range given an array of entities. All right. So these are what we think they're generic to our application. So we should be able to get by an ID. We should be able to get all. We should be able to get by a predicate. That could be an expression. We should be able to add. We should be able to add multiple. We should be able to remove, and we should also be able to remove multiple. All right. So this is now our generic. Our next order of business now is to now create an interface for each and every entity we have. All right, because you might want to extend. So if you want to extend, then it's good to just bring in those individual repositories. And also, if you look at the solid principles, the interface segregation principle, it says whatever interface you have, it should be specific to that functionality. So an interface should not be fired, whereby one interface does several things. But if it's an interface to do with actors, let it focus on those actors. So we're going to create interfaces for each specific entity. So I'm going to start with an repository. I'm going to create an iActor repository. If you guessed it, congratulations. So it's going to be an iActor repository, like so. Make it public. Okay, but since we want this repository to have access to everything that's in a generic, we are going to inherit from the generic. Okay, so I'm going to have I generic repository pattern. But This generic repository wants you to give it a class. So since this is an actor repository, then the class that we're going to give it is going to be an actor. All right, control dot. All right. So now, whenever I use this repository, I have access to everything that one has. And here I can actually add more of my interfaces. So I'm going to do the same for biography, genre, and movie. Okay, so create a new item, interface, iMovie repository, and you're going to make that public, and you're going to it should be iMovie, shouldn't be a small letter. Let me rename that to avoid issues. And this one is going to inherit from the iGeneral repository. It's a movie, give it a movie object, and proceed for the genre, new item, interface, iGeneral interface, no, iGeneral repository, make the public, and let that inherit from the iGeneric, and give it a genre, class, and finally one for the biography. So add item, and this is for the biography repository, enter, again make the public, iGeneric, and give it the biography. We have all of this ready to be used when necessary. So we're going to use what we call a unit of work, right? So this is just going to represent a single entity, a single instance of an application. So to avoid adding all of these dependencies to our dependency injection container, we're going to bring in what we call a unit of work. And a unit of work, all it does is it is going to get a single transaction and do it, and you see how that works in practical sense. So within the repository, I want you to create another interface, call it the I unit of work. So go there and call it the I unit of work. Okay, I'm just gonna make it public, and we want to dispose some stuff, so let's just bring in the I disposable. Okay, so this just manages unused resources. So what do we need? What do we need in here? So we're gonna have the I actor repository. We're gonna call that the actor repository. Okay, and we're gonna have a get on it. Then we're gonna have the iMovie repository. Oh, sorry about that. iMovie repository. iMovie repository. iMovie repository. Movie repository. And then get that. Then we're gonna have the iGeneral repository. A generic journal. Just make sure you don't confuse those two. So iGeneral repository, journal repository, and just get that. And finally, we're gonna have the biography repository, and get that. And something I'm going to add is going to be int save. So enter framework, there's something you do to save it. Okay. So now we're saying when we use our I unit of work, it's going to give us access to all of these repositories. So whenever we use this, it'll be a window to our repositories, right? So now we have set our contract, defined it that our generic repository is going to have these four. Now we have to make an actual implementation of how you expect these guys to talk to a database. So we said the domain just has the logic, but the actual implementation will be in the data access. So I want you to go to the data access and create a class, a folder there, call that folder implementation, like so. Then within that, I want you to create a class, call it generic repository. So generic repository, like so. All right. So this class will implement the I generic repository. So I want us to implement that like so. So this is what is going to happen. But for you to implement this, you have to give it a T. So I'm going to give it a T, and instead again where the T is a class. T is class. And you see it's already complaining. It's saying implement the interface. So I'm going to click this and say implement interface. So this is going to bring in and I wonder where that error is coming from. I generate repository, get me a T, where T is class, where T is a class. All right, and then you wonder what is going on. You need to give it over there, because if you want to implement that, it needs to have a T. Okay. So now we have to now go ahead and implement those. But remember, for you to talk to a database and entity framework, you need to have a context. So we need to bring our context here and inject it using dependency injection of the constructor. So it means you are going to have a constructor. So CTOR gives you a constructor, right? Then we want, this has what we call our context, like so. So I'm going to press Control dot there and bring in the field. And I'm going to make this underscore and remove that. So for you to talk to a database, you need a context. So if in this generic repository implementation we want to talk to a database, then we need to have a context. That's just the way entity framework does it. So there is our context. Okay. So now let us proceed. So for you to add an entity, you're going to get the context and then say set the T and add the entity. Well, that's all you need. All right. So it means anything that's given, be it an actor, whatever, once you call this, then that's going to do. For you to add a range, which are multiple, then you're going to get the context again. So you're going to say context.set.add range to the entities. All right. For you to find an expression, you're going to say, okay, get me the context, then set, then just find me the predicate. Right. And I'm seeing this sort of error, so I'm going to bring here a where clause. Okay. So you're saying set that, and once you set that, since you're returning, then return it for me there. All right. And for you to get all you need to do is return the context dot set of T. All right. Then just to list. And there you have it. For you to get by ID, then you need to return the context. All right. Dot set it on the T. So set on T. Then once you're set, dot, you could use find or you could use first or default, whatever you prefer, and set. Of course, that will give you a warning to say it could be now, but that can be handled. And for you to remove something, you're going to get the context, and you're going to set on T, and dot remove the entity. And for you to remove a range, will be similar with that one on top. Get the context dot set on T and remove range. Then you're going to remove the range. and I'm just going to get that. So at this juncture, all we have done is we're saying this is a generic repository. If one wants to add, so it's very, very simple, because this will be enough for everything, for all CRUD operations. So instead of you having an iActor repository that handles all the CRUD, an iMovie that handles all the CRUD for the movie, this should suffice. The only time you use an iActor repository will just be if there's something that is specific to that use case, and we're going to see one of them. So now we have implemented our generic repository. The next course of business now would do to now implement the context in each individual repositories, right? So here we had the actor, the biography, the iJournal. Now we're going to create them also, because you might want to use them. So we're going to create also the actor repository. So I'm going to add a class there. We're still in data access because that's where we're talking to the data. So I'm going to have an actor repository here, repository, like so. I'm going to make it public. And you want the actor repository to inherit from the what? Generic repository, which has already been implemented, and it needs a class. Our class will be actor, like so. Our class will be actor. Also, there's something we want to implement there. We implement the iActor repository. iActor repository. All right. Then you're seeing an error there. We're going to fix that. Then we are going to have a constructor, CTOR, because the constructor now needs to get the MovieDB context. So you're going to say MovieDB context, like so. And then there you're going to give it to the base as well, because you were heading from that base. That base needs to get the context as well, like so. So you've done it for the movie. So you're saying whenever I call actors repository, give it the context, and give it to the base its parent the context as well. So we're going to do the same for the other three. For the genre, so I want you to add a class. You're going to call it movie repository, like so. Make it public, and generic repository, give it a movie, like so, and also get it from the iMovie repository, and here the constructor takes in a MovieDB context, and pass it to the base as well. Pass the context. You're done with that. Then you're going to do one for journal. Call that journal repository. So journal repository, make that public, and this is generic repository. We're going to give it a journal, and what error are we getting? I give it a journal, then give it a journal, an iJournal repository, like so. And you're going to bring in your constructor, then you're going to give it the MovieDB context, and the same goes to the base as well. Give it the context, and I wonder why. Yeah, because we put generic, supposed to be journal, like so. Then we're going to finally for the biography. So biography repository, enter, make that public, and we're going to have generic repository. We're giving it a biography, and we're using the iBiography repository. Then you're bringing it to your CTOR. Then you have the MovieDB context, call it context, and the same should go to your base context. All right, so all we're saying here is whatever you want to do, your implementations are going to be here. So it might look like a lot of work, but you want to do this once in every project, and whenever you're adding, it becomes very, very simple. So I want you to think long term on this one. Don't just think of now. Okay, so the last thing for us to implement is obviously the unit of work. So I want you to go to implementations and add a class, call that unit of work, like so, and this is going to be public, and it will inherit from the I unit of work, right? So for you to use this, you need a constructor. The constructor takes the movie db context, call it context. Let me just close this up a little bit. Call it context, and there's some things that you would want to now. Okay, so if you go to your I unit of work, you will see that there were things that we had brought in, the I repositories and whatnot. These are the ones that you need to have here. So I'm going to bring in a public I actor repository, call that actor. Okay, so get and set, because it's I unit of work, just make the set public, private rather. Then you can proceed to do one for public I movie repository, call it movie, get set private, and then public I biography repository, call that biography, and do that. And finally do it for public I journal repository, journal and generic, giving me a headache here. I journal repository, call that journal, and get set public. So okay, and then we had a method here called save, and also since it's disposable, then we can also call them called dispose. So I want you to go down here and say public int save. So whenever you call the save method, it's going to save, because in the framework, if you just call the add, it just adds the context, but it does not reflect into the database. So you have to call the save method. So here you're going to return the context. All right, so I'm going to bring in the context first, pretty much like that. So on that context, you're going to go context or save changes. So that would do. Then you could also have the dispose method just to help you dispose things. Public void dispose. And what do you do here? Just get the context. Just get the context. Get the context and dispose it. So whenever we call the unit of work, there are things that we want to implement, things I want to call. So whenever you see the word actor here, as the I repository, the question is, what do you want to call subsequently? So whenever you see the word actor there, you are calling an actual implementation of what? That actor repository which we have created, that class. And that class needs a context in its constructor. All right. The same way goes for movie. Whenever I'm calling the movie, then I want you to call the movie. Whenever I'm calling the genre, then call the genre repository. Whenever I'm calling the biography, then call. Okay. So whenever I call this, which is a repository over here, give me the actual implementation of that class, because you're gonna call a context. All right, and it looks like we have something that's missing. I don't know what that is. Let me just do this and implement that interface. Serve journal I actor repository. Actor repository. So I think what it wants here is actor. This doesn't really make sense to me. I actor repository, actor repository. Why is it the case? Okay, just a minute. Actor repository gets the actor there. I wonder why it's tripping. I wonder why it is tripping. Let me go to unit of work. So this is because I had used this. So I'm going to use actor there. And here I'm going to use movie. So this structure also saves you from possible mistakes. So genre, and call this biography, like so. So I should be able to, that should be able to go through without an error. All right, I know this video is long, I know, but stay with me to the end. It's going to be worth it in the end. So now we talked of the concept of dependency injection, and if you go to our API, we had brought in the entity framework core there. So for us to use the unit of work in one place and to avoid calling it everywhere, we also have to put it into the dependency injection container. So I'm going to put it in the dependency injection container. I'm going to say builder.services.add transient. That's just a state. So add transient, I'm going to call this an I unit of work. So whenever you see that unit of work, I want you to use the unit of work implementation, like so. So we have registered our dependency over there. So we're saying, whenever you see the word unit of work, go call me that class, the actual implementation of that class. Now our next order of business now is just to create a controller to get our actors and see if that unit of work is going to really help us now. So I want you to go to controllers here and create add controller. Make sure it's an API controller. We're going to use an empty one. I'm going to call this actors controller. Enter. So our first order of business there is to see if that works. So I want you to go here, and the first one will be an HTTP GET request. But before we bring in the GET request. For us to use now this I unit of work which we have put here, we'll just inject it into our controller. So let's inject that first. So ctor and bring in an I unit of work here, call it unit of work. Okay, and bring it as a field, like so. And then here you're going to have something like that. So there you go. Now we're going to say public action is at GERD. You're going to say var actors from repository is equal to get me the unit of work dot, and it's as if dot actor. In that actor there should be a get all function, like that. And once you do that, you could just return an OK actors from repo. Now you might look like you've done a lot of work, but I could tell you that if we had to have 17 more enders tomorrow, I won't have to create for each and every one. Okay, so let's go and try this one out. I'm going to use the II Express. Then let's go and land that and see what we get in the browser. So it will load the Swagger, and there, that's your endpoint. And if I'm going to try it out and execute, you see there I have it. I have all the actors that I had there, and I didn't really code a repository for the actors. And to show you that that's actually possible, I could actually change here and not get actors and say I want to get all movies. Okay, and I could run that, and if I get here, try it all, this should get me all the movies. You see, so this gets me all of the movies, and I didn't have to create a repository pattern for the movie, for the actor, just one of those generic. So now you've seen where one can get all actors. All right, congratulations. The next thing would be, how do I now extend? How do I extend For instance, somebody wants to get actors and movies, for instance. This maybe is not what you could use in your it's not maybe in your repository, but you want to bring in actors, for instance. So what can you do to extend this repository? So what you would do is, let's say for instance I want to get actors with their movies. I am going to go to the iActor repository, because that's where it all begins from. So I want to get, let's say, a specific functionality to do with something, for instance. So I'll get here in this repository, then I'm going to bring in a new function. Let's say IEnumerable. This returns actor. Let's say get actors with movies, for instance. Get actors with movies, like so. So I have brought in a new, maybe this is close there. So I have brought in a new, I wonder why the blue is coming, just build it. I have brought in a new extension to my repository. And this is just specific to the actor repository. And from there, once you call it in your repository, you have to go here and actually implement it. And you see it's giving you an error that it says, I want you to implement that. So click dot, enter there. It says, there you have it. Here, I want you to implement that. So you could say that, okay, fine. I would say var result, var actors with movies, for instance, with movies is equal to, and here you're also going to learn something that might just save your career. I'll say context. So get me the context. Get me the context dot get me actors, okay? But also in that actors, I want you to include movies. So u is equal to u.movie. Then to list. Get it to list. Like so. And I wonder what's happening here. It's saying it's inaccessible due to its protection level. Let me go to actor repository. It should be something that the movie actor repository. Did we protect something from access? It's saying is not acceptable due to its protection. Now have I locked up the context? There's one way to find out. Okay, let me make that public. And let's go to the actor repository. Actor repository. So there we have it. We have the context there. So we're saying get me your actors and include movie. So here NFM ignores. It will link, those links will not help you, and then just return actors of movie. And there you have a new functionality over there. Okay, now if I go back to my controller, I could add another one, call it http get, and I could just say this one should be /movies, for instance. Then I could say, I would just copy this to rename it. Then I would come here and say get with movies. All right. Then once I do that, all right. So now you're going to say unit of work dot actors with movies, which is there. And let us try to test that out and see. And if I execute that, and boom, unfortunately I end up with an error. It says a possible object cycle was detected. All right, so we need to fix that. So we're seeing it's saying that a possible object was detected. So the way we fix that is, with interest of time, you are going to go to the dependency injection container, and you're going to ignore those cycles. Okay, so this code works. You add NVC, you add JSON options, and then you're saying, as you're serializing the difference handler, ignore any cycle. So I'm going to stop that, and I'm going to start that again. And once that happens, I could just try it out again. And this time around, it's able to get me Chuck Norris. He's in Wakanda Forever. He's in Spider-Man. So you see, one to many is working. The biography is going to be now because that doesn't exist. Jane Doe is in one movie. Van Damme is in one movie. And so there you have it. You are able to just make it general. Give it whatever you give it, and it gets back. So if your application is going to increase in time, it's going to increase with the entities, you have no need to worry. All you're doing is adding an interface for it if there are any special cases. If not, then you're just going to use whatever is there. Now, I know that there's a lot of things we could do here. We could bring in the post, the put, the get request. But if I do that, it will be a very, very long video. This could be a course on its own, but I hope with this information you could implement this on your applications, and it could save you a lot of time. So if you've been with me this far, thank you very much. I really appreciate. You could share, comment, like, and subscribe. And if you want to be part of the process, you could sign up for the newsletter, or you could be a Patreon and support this free content that I intend to be putting out whenever I find time. Thank you very much, and do have a blessed day.